The distress signal had been repeating for 11 hours when Command finally marked it as a lost cause. The coordinates drifted at the edge of a dead star's gravity well, deep inside a war zone where rescue ships did not return and heroes were not remembered. The message was simple, translated through broken alien code and fragments of human linguistics. Royal vessel destroyed, Queen alive, requesting asylum. Silence followed. No fleet mobilized. No diplomats answered. The war had already taken too much. Only one human soldier kept listening. The dropship cut through the ash-colored sky like a falling knife. Its hull screamed against radiation storms and shattered debris from 1,000 failed battles. The planet below had no official name in any language, only a classification in human military archives. Deathworld Tier 5, atmospheric toxins, hyperaggressive predators, unstable gravity tides. It was the kind of place commanders used as examples when teaching recruits what survival did not look like. Yet the soldier descended anyway. He had read the reports about the alien empire, proud species with centuries of power, now collapsing under pressure from enemies that did not negotiate. Their royal bloodlines were rumored to be ancient, almost sacred, and their queens were never seen outside palace sanctuaries. For one to send a distress signal meant the unthinkable had already happened. Empires did not beg. Not until the end. The dropship slammed into the surface hard enough to crack stone. Dust and black snow filled the air. Warning lights screamed in the cockpit. Systems failing, oxygen thinning, radiation rising. The soldier powered down everything except life support and stepped out into the storm. The sky looked rum. Pale lightning crawled across clouds that moved in the opposite direction of the wind. The ground shifted in slow waves, as if the planet itself breathed beneath his boots. This was the kind of environment that crushed arrogance and rewarded stubbornness. A perfect death world. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy for surviving places like this. Most species called them reckless. Some called them insane. A few whispered a word that translated loosely as unstoppable. The soldier preferred a simpler term: necessary. The beacon pulsed faintly on his visor, guiding him through broken metal and alien wreckage. What remained of the royal vessel stretched across the valley like the bones of a fallen titan. Sections of curved silver hull jutted from the soil at impossible angles. Fires burned without fuel, fed by leaking reactor energy that painted everything in sick green light. The battlefield was silent. No guards, no rescue ships, no survivors rushing to greet him, only wind and distant thunder, abandoned. He moved carefully through the wreckage, rifle raised, senses tuned to every vibration in the ground. Deathworld predators were patient. They learned quickly. They hunted anything that moved, especially wounded prey. The signal grew stronger. Shattered doorway hung open ahead, its edges melted by heat. Inside, the air shimmered with unstable energy fields. The soldiers stepped through anyway. Humans did not wait for safe conditions. They made safety by refusing to stop. The corridor beyond was dim and silent. Strange symbols glowed faintly along the walls, flickering like dying stars. He passed broken defense drones and torn banners bearing an unfamiliar crest. Royal guards had fought here. They had fought hard. The walls told the story in scorch marks and clawed metal. The signal pulsed again, close now. He reached a sealed chamber at the heart of the wreck. The door had been forced shut from the inside, its surface cracked, but still holding. Something massive had tried to break in, something strong enough to bend alloy meant for space travel. Deep gouges scarred the metal, each one larger than his forearm. Whatever hunted this world had already found the queen. The soldier placed a charge and stepped back. The blast echoed through the corridor like thunder. The door collapsed inward in a shower of sparks and dust. Silence waited on the other side. The chamber was dimly lit by emergency crystals glowing in soft gold. At its center stood a figure that did not belong to a battlefield. Tall and regal even in exhaustion, armored in emerald plates etched with intricate designs. A crown of living metal rested against copper hair that shimmered like fire. Pale blue eyes locked onto him with a mixture of disbelief and quiet fury. An alien queen alone and cornered at the end of her empire. She did not look relieved to see him. She looked confused. "You came," she said in broken human speech, each word careful and precise. "Your people did not answer." He lowered his rifle, but did not relax. The gouges on the door were fresh. "The hunt was not over. I did," he replied. "That is enough." The queen studied him as though trying to understand a creature that should not exist. Humans were not part of her alliance. Humans had no treaties with her empire. Humans owed her nothing. Yet here one stood, breathing toxic air and bleeding radiation just to answer a call no one else cared about. The ground trembled beneath their feet. A distant roar rolled through the wreckage, deep and hungry. Dust rained from the ceiling. The queen's posture stiffened, her regal calm cracking for the first time. "It returns," she whispered. The soldier glanced toward the ruined corridor and adjusted his grip on the rifle. He had seen enough death worlds to recognize the warning signs. Apex predator, territorial, persistent, and now it knew exactly where its prey was hiding. He stepped forward and positioned himself between the queen and the shattered doorway. "Stay behind me." The queen stared at his back, confusion shifting into something more complicated. Fear mixed with awe. The realization that the weakest species in the galaxy had just placed itself between her and extinction. Outside, metal screamed as something massive tore through the wreck. The doorway bent inward. The soldier did not move. The first impact shook the corridor like a collapsing mountain. Metal groaned, then split with a scream that echoed through the wreck. The soldier braced himself against the floor as the doorway warped inward another inch. Something enormous pressed against the hull from the other side, testing the barrier with patient force rather than blind rage. That alone made his pulse quicken. Deathworld predators that learned were always the worst kind. The queen stepped closer despite his warning. Her voice dropped to a whisper meant only for him. She explained that the creature had stalked the wreck since the crash, circling in long, silent intervals before striking again. It did not rush. It studied. It waited until exhaustion and fear did half the work for it. The soldier understood that tactic well. Humans had used the same strategy on hostile planets for decades. Another strike dented the doorway inward. Dust fell from the ceiling in slow drifting clouds. Emergency crystals flickered, casting shadows that stretched like claws across the walls. "Is there another exit?" he asked. "There was," she answered. It learned. The soldier nodded once. Of course it did.
How?
This was a death world.
How?
Nothing stayed ignorant for long. Far above the planet's poisonous clouds, a silent observation craft drifted in orbit. Its hull absorbed light invisible to most sensors. Inside, a cluster of alien figures watched the battlefield unfold through long-range scanners. They were not allies of the fallen empire, nor enemies of humanity. They were historians, collectors of civilizations, beings who believed survival revealed truth more clearly than diplomacy ever could. One observer leaned closer to the projection of the ruined vessel. The translation feed replayed the Queen's distress signal and the human response. Only one soldier had answered. "Why send one?" another observer asked. "Is this ritual sacrifice?" "No," the first replied. "This is their pattern. Humans test danger with individuals. If one survives, more follow." They watched the trembling structure below and recorded every detail. In their records, humans already carried a growing reputation. Deathworld natives, creatures who evolved alongside predators instead of avoiding them. Still, even they expected the lone soldier to fall within minutes. On the surface, the soldier scanned the chamber for defensive options. Ammunition was limited. Oxygen thinner by the second. Radiation climbing. The creature outside had patience and power. He had training and stubbornness. The equation did not look balanced, but humans had never depended on fair equations. The Queen moved to a shattered console and activated a fading projection. A map flickered into existence above the floor, highlighting the wreckage around them. She pointed to a distant section buried under collapsed hull plates. A secondary reactor still pulsed faintly there. If they could reach it, they might trigger a distress beacon strong enough to pierce the storm. Rescue would still take time, but time itself was survival. The soldier studied the path. Narrow corridors, collapsed sections, long stretches exposed to open sky. Perfect hunting ground. "Then we move," he said. The Queen hesitated, confusion crossing her face again. In her culture, warriors formed ranks. Armies moved together, A lone soldier making decisions without command felt reckless beyond reason. "You do not wait for reinforcements?" she asked. "There are none." Another impact crushed the doorway inward. Metal shrieked and tore like paper. Claw the size of a vehicle punched through the gap, searching blindly. Its surface glistened with dark armored plates that shifted like overlapping shields. The soldier fired a short burst. The creature withdrew with a roar that rattled the chamber. Silence returned, but it was thinner now, stretched tight like a wire ready to snap. They moved quickly through the ruined corridors, stepping over broken drones and fallen guards. Outside, the storm had grown stronger. Lightning crawled across the sky in slow, twisting arcs. Gravity tides tugged at their steps, making the ground feel soft and uncertain. Every movement drained strength faster than it should have. The queen struggled to keep pace. Her armor was ceremonial, designed for presence rather than endurance. The soldier slowed without comment, adjusting his route to shield her from the worst of the winds. She noticed the change. Her people believed humans were impulsive and loud, creatures driven by emotion rather than logic. Yet this one moved with quiet calculation, conserving strength, planning routes, anticipating danger without needing orders. Misunderstanding cracked into curiosity. Above them, the observation craft recorded the movement with growing interest. "He protects her as if bound by oath," one observer noted. "There is no treaty," another replied. "Perhaps humans invent loyalty where none exists." A sudden roar split the storm. The predator crashed onto the wreckage ahead of them, its full size revealed for the first time. It towered above the broken hull, limbs thick as towers, eyes glowing like molten glass. The ground sank beneath its weight. It allowed them to leave the chamber. It had followed silently until the terrain favored it. The soldier pushed the queen behind a slab of metal and opened fire again. Bullets sparked against armored plates, barely slowing the creature's advance, aimed for joints, for eyes, for any weakness evolution might have missed. The queen watched in stunned silence. No hesitation, no plea for retreat. Only relentless resistance. Humans fought like survival was a habit. The creature lunged. The soldier grabbed the queen and dragged her aside as the ground exploded where they had stood. Debris rained around them. The path to the reactor lay just beyond the ridge, painfully close. Above the storm, the observers leaned forward as one. "This one will die," a voice predicted. But the soldier rose again, battered and breathing hard, and raised his rifle for another impossible stand. And the predator began to circle, learning his rhythm, studying his limits, preparing for the final strike. The creature did not charge again right away. It circled them with slow, deliberate steps, its glowing eyes tracking every movement. The storm howled across the broken valley, carrying ash and static that crackled against armor and skin. The soldier kept his rifle raised, breathing slow and steady, forcing his heartbeat into a rhythm he could control. Panic wasted oxygen. Panic wasted time. On death worlds, discipline was survival. The queen crouched behind the slab of twisted metal, her breathing uneven. She watched the predator move with the same silent terror that had haunted her since the crash. Her empire had faced fleets and armies, but this was different. This was the kind of enemy evolution created when a planet never stopped trying to kill its own life. The soldiers studied the terrain. The ridge leading to the reactor lay only a short distance away, but the open ground between them might as well have been an ocean of fire. The creature had chosen this battlefield carefully. It had driven them into the open where escape paths were few and visibility was poor. It had waited until exhaustion slowed them. It had learned patience. Humans respected patience. They also learned how to break it. "Stay low and move when I move," he told the queen. "You intend to fight it again," she said. "I intend to keep it busy." She stared at him as though trying to understand a language beyond words. Her people believed survival meant avoiding unnecessary risk. Humans seemed to believe survival meant stepping directly into danger and refusing to step back. The creature roared and lunged forward, its massive limbs crushing the wreckage beneath its weight. The soldier sprinted toward the ridge, firing controlled bursts that flashed like lightning in the storm. The queen followed, her ceremonial armor clattering against broken metal as gravity tides pulled at every step. The ground shook with each impact behind them. A shadow swallowed the ridge as the predator leapt, slamming down ahead of their path. The soldier skidded to a halt and fired again, forcing the creature to recoil just enough to create a narrow opening.
Oh.
He shouted. They ran through the gap as debris rained around them. The entrance to the buried reactor chamber yawned beneath a collapsed hull plate, half hidden by drifting ash. The soldier dove inside first, dragging the queen down beside him as the creature's claws slammed into the metal above them. The chamber trembled, but the hull held. For now. Inside, the air hummed with unstable energy. A damaged reactor core glowed in the center of the room, its light pulsing in slow waves that painted everything in cold blue. Emergency systems flickered weakly, barely alive after the crash. The queen rushed to the control interface, her hands moving with practiced precision despite the tremor in her fingers. She began rerouting power to the long-range beacon. Symbols scrolled across the cracked display. Progress crawled forward one fragile percentage at a time. "How long?" the soldier asked. "Too long," the creature roared above them, its claws tearing at the hull in violent bursts. Each strike sent dust cascading from the ceiling. Metal shrieked under relentless pressure. Above the planet, the silent observers leaned closer to their displays. The recordings now filled with rising alarm. Sensors tracked the predator's strikes and the soldier's position beneath the failing hull. "He continues to resist," one observer said softly. "He has no chance of victory," another replied. "That is not the point," the first answered. "Observe his persistence." They replayed the footage of the soldier shielding the queen, dragging her through toxic storms, standing his ground against a creature that dwarfed him. Patterns emerged in their analysis. Humans did not measure survival in probability, they measured it in effort. On the surface, the soldier scanned the chamber for anything useful. His ammunition counter blinked red. His oxygen reserves dipped lower with every breath. His training whispered a harsh truth he had heard many times before. Sometimes survival was not about winning. Sometimes it was about buying time for someone else to live. He moved toward the reactor core, studying its unstable glow. A human solution began forming in the back of his mind. Dangerous, improvised, almost certainly painful. "The reactor overload?" he asked. The queen froze. "Yes, but the explosion would consume this valley." He nodded once. Her eyes widened. "You cannot mean to destroy yourself. I mean to stop it from following us." The ceiling buckled as a claw punched through, tearing open the chamber to the storm above. The predator roared in triumph, sensing its prey cornered at last. The queen stared at the soldier, realization dawning like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. Humans were not fearless. They understood danger clearly. They simply refused to let fear decide the outcome. "You would sacrifice your life for mine," she said quietly. He shook his head. "For the beacon." The distinction mattered. Humans did not fight for glory. They fought so someone else could keep going. Above them, the observers fell silent as their analysis recalculated. A new understanding began forming, one that would reshape their records forever. "These beings," one whispered, "are not reckless." "No," another agreed. "They are relentless." The reactor's glow intensified as the queen rerouted power with shaking hands. The beacon signal surged, pushing through the storm and into the void beyond. A faint confirmation tone echoed through the chamber. The message was out. The predator tore a larger opening in the ceiling, its massive form forcing its way inside. Its glowing eyes locked onto the two figures below. The soldier stepped forward and raised his rifle one last time, and the observers realized, with growing awe, that the human was smiling. The predator lunged through the torn ceiling with a roar that shook the reactor chamber to its foundations. Its armored body scraped against the broken hull as it forced itself inside. Filling the room with heat and the smell of burning metal, the soldier did not step back. He planted his boots against the trembling floor and fired until the rifle clicked empty. Sparks burst across the creature's plated hide, slowing it for only a heartbeat. That heartbeat was enough. He dropped the rifle and ran straight for the reactor console. The queen realized his plan at the same moment the alarms changed pitch. Instead of warning, they began to count. The reactor core surged brighter, its pulsing glow shifting from cold blue to blinding white. Energy spilled into the chamber like a rising tide. "You cannot outrun this," she shouted. He nodded. "I know." The predator charged, claws tearing across the floor as it lunged toward him. The soldier grabbed a damaged power conduit and ripped it free, sparks erupting as the cable whipped through the air. He slammed it into the reactor housing, forcing the unstable core into a violent feedback loop. The chamber erupted with thunder as the countdown accelerated. The queen stood frozen, caught between disbelief and understanding. Her empire had taught her that rulers survive by sacrifice from others. Humans seemed to survive by choosing sacrifice themselves. The soldier turned to her and pointed toward a narrow escape tunnel carved into the rock behind the reactor. It had been hidden beneath debris, invisible unless you knew where to look. The final path the creature had not yet discovered. "Go," he said. She hesitated for only a second before moving. Pride, fear, and grief collided inside her chest, but survival demanded action. She sprinted toward the tunnel as the chamber shook around her. Behind her, the predator roared in fury and leapt for the soldier. The explosion came like a second sunrise. The reactor erupted in a pillar of white fire that swallowed the chamber and burst upward through the wreckage. The valley became a storm of light and thunder, a shockwave tearing across the Deathworld landscape. The predator vanished in the blast, its roar cut short by overwhelming energy. The queen was thrown forward by the force of the explosion, tumbling through the tunnel until the world became silence and darkness. Far above the planet, the observation craft recorded the detonation. Their instruments struggled to adjust to the sudden spike in radiation and heat. When the readings stabilized, the valley below had changed forever. A glowing crater marked the place where the wreck once stood. The observers spoke in hushed tones, their earlier certainty gone. He chose extinction over surrender. No, the first corrected gently. He chose survival for another. Their records updated in real time. Humanity's classification shifted once again. Deathworld survivors, pack protectors, a species defined by resilience and loyalty beyond logic. Hours passed before the storm began to fade. Rescue ships answered the beacon and pierced the planet's toxic clouds. They scanned the crater and detected a single faint life sign emerging from the tunnel's far end. The queen staggered into the pale light of morning. Her armor was scorched and cracked, her crown blackened by soot, but she was alive. Human medics rushed toward her, their movements fast and efficient. They spoke gently, guiding her toward the safety of their transport. She searched the horizon, her voice barely steady. The soldier. The medics exchanged glances before leading her to a nearby ridge overlooking the crater. The earth still glowed faintly with heat. Smoke drifted upward in slow spirals. There was no chance anyone survived the blast, one medic said quietly. The queen lowered her head, grief pressing against her chest. For the first time since the fall of her empire, she felt the weight of loss not as a ruler, but as a survivor.
Oh, yes.
Then a voice crackled over the rescue channel. Signal flare deployed. I could use a ride. Every head turned toward the far edge of the crater. A small figure emerged from behind a shattered rock formation, waving a flickering beacon. The soldier walked slowly, his armor scorched and torn, his face smeared with ash. He looked exhausted, injured, and very much alive. The queen stared in stunned silence as he approached. You survived? He shrugged. Humans are stubborn. Later, aboard the rescue ship, the observers transmitted their final report to the wider galaxy. It spread faster than any fleet or empire. The message was simple and unforgettable. Humans did not abandon allies. Humans did not retreat from Deathworld danger. Humans answered calls no one else would answer. The queen stood at the observation window as the Deathworld shrank behind them. Her empire was gone, her future uncertain, but something new had begun in the ashes of that valley. A fragile alliance built not on treaties or power, but on a single act of courage. She turned to the soldier. Why did you come for me when no one else did? He considered the question for a moment before answering. Because someone asked. The simplicity of the answer settled into her heart with quiet strength. The galaxy had spent centuries misunderstanding humans. Now it would spend centuries learning the truth. In the darkness of space, the rescue ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, carrying with it a queen who had learned the meaning of human resilience and a soldier who never believed he had done anything extraordinary. Behind them, the stars burned quietly, waiting for the next call that only humans would answer.